Well, looks like it.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Nice to see you,
Yeah,
Michael.
we love this.
Yeah. So Christian, we're at 35, and there's no one joining.
I would say that I think that will be pretty close to everybody,
I'll keep an eye
because
on it.
there's quite a few people who are jumping on the same computer, and
Yeah.
we have everything recorded. So if anybody misses anything super important, we'll be able to show it to everybody after.
We'll declare quorum at 35. How's that?
We're there.
Wonderful. So to get started, my name is Jessie. I am from Amovino. I am here tonight with the wonderful team from Winston, which is Christian and Andrew, who you'll see somewhere around there.
Hi, guys.
And Rachel and Marcus from Daydreamer Wines.
Hi, guys. Welcome.
So today we will be virtually discovering Daydreamer Wines, which is a fun new thing for all of us. We're going to be doing this by tasting through the wines. We're going to start with the Viognier, which is not yet released, and then go on to the Pinot Gris, the Pinot Noir, Melia, and Jasper. And we'll be doing this with Rachel and Marcus, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, it's thank you so much for joining us, guys. That's such a wonderful thing to be able to give to everybody, as a chance to talk to you guys while trying all the wines.
No, it's fantastic to be here. We're pretty stoked. I think it's a fabulous idea from Amovino and Winston to get everyone together and virtually taste. And I think it's going to be a really nice format to learn some stuff and have a bit of a relax and get to know each other and all that sort of stuff.
You can do it in your jammies if you want. It's all good.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, I should have done that.
Everyone's got jammies on the bottom. You can't see it.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
So I'm thinking that maybe Marcus and Rachel, if you could just give us an overview of the winery itself and just tell us a bit about Daydreamer, just to kind of introduce us to the event.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So Daydreamer is a little Naramata winery in the Okanagan. It's run by myself and my wife, Rachel. I actually met Rach in Niagara. I set up a group of wineries over there, and Rach was working in the industry, basically doing all the stuff that I don't do, which is most of the smart stuff. And we basically sort of fell in love over there, and we ended up starting Daydreamer in 2013. And yeah, we've been here doing it ever since. We actually, the current property that the winery is at is sort of right up the north end of Naramata Bench, and we run our vineyards organically. We own or lease all of our vineyards, and I guess we're known kind of as a specialty organic natural wine producer. I'm an Australian trained winemaker. I grew up kind of in the industry in Australia. My uncle had a winery in the Grampians region in Western Victoria, and I did an enology degree in South Australia, and then was a flying winemaker for a bunch of years. And then while I was in Canada, I also got my Masters of Wine certification. So yeah, don't really know how to do anything else. Rach has got a few more talents than me, but that's basically it. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else interesting?
Well, yeah, we've got 3 kids that help in the vineyard, and
Give you names for wines.
yeah, named after the 3 red wines: Jasper, Amelia, and Tay. And then yeah, so kind of a family business for sure.
How many harvests have you done, Marcus? You've done quite a few.
Lost track.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a big number though, right?
Yeah, I think it's close to 40.
40 harvests.
Yeah, so I'm not, I haven't, I'm 46, but I did a lot of years. I did multiple harvests, sort of northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere, or multiple regions. So it sounds probably more impressive than it actually is.
I think Marcus is selling himself a little bit short. He mentioned he's a master of wine. What he didn't mention is he's only the 5th person in Canada. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jesse.
I think,
Or Marcus,
right?
actually. Marcus, sorry. Yeah, Marcus.
Well, yeah, I was the 5th in Canada. We got 2 more now.
Oh, we do.
Yeah.
So we're up to the grand total of 7 people in Canada with the same certification.
Yes.
And only 3 in BC, right?
He's the only
sure.
oenology trained master of wine in Canada.
Yeah, so only 40 harvests, master of wine, 1 of 3 in BC, but it's not that big a deal.
No.
At the end of the day, you're only as good as your worst wine. So hopefully we don't have any.
Ooh. All right, well, we're going to have to find out which one that is, aren't we? Alrighty.
Before
Should
we get tasting, if anyone has any questions, we want you to ask questions, please.
Yes,
because,
absolutely.
Yeah, because there's so many of us. If you could type them in, we will ask them as we go. And if we don't get to it as we go, we'll ask them at the end. So please.
So Jesse and I will be running through the chat, going through any questions that pop up.
Yeah.
Just to try and make sure that it doesn't get like too crowded with 35 microphones going off at the same time, because that could be a little bit crazy. But if you have any questions at any point during any part of the presentation, pop them in the chat and we'll make sure we get to them. I see a few people just like waving wine bags around and wine bottles around and wine glasses around. I think they're trying to give us a sign.
So everyone has their sample kits with their wine.
Amazing.
That's awesome.
It's such a great idea. That's well done, guys. I think that's a fantastic idea for this.
We're very excited.
Christian put in all the hard work putting these. I give him full credit.
There was a little bit going on last night. I was just sitting here, I had the music going way too loud, and there was roughly 200 sample bottles just spread out across the table. It was an interesting time.
I offered to help, and he's like, no, I don't know.
Yeah. I for some reason, I thought it would be an hour job, and I was wrong.
So we're going to start with the Viognier, which is labeled 1.
Is labeled 1. So everybody grab your wine glasses, everybody grab your samples. So the Viognier is actually, we were very, very lucky and very fortunate. Marcus and Rachel actually sent us some Viognier before it's officially released, which is, we're very thankful for that. So thank you very much, guys. It's a huge, and it's very exciting to be able to like share it with everybody too.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
Yeah, you guys.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, you'll be the first people tasting it.
Wow. Okay, that's very exciting.
So yeah, we do. So we at Daydreamer we've got 2 labels. We have a signature label that has my family crest on it, and then we have the Daydreamer label. And basically, the idea with the signature label is that if we have any really special wines or wines that are sort of next level that we want to baby, and perhaps we don't make them every year, they go under the signature label. So this wine will actually go into that label. It's from 2019 vintage, and it comes from a pretty interesting vineyard that I basically have clients that own the vineyard, and it's in the Similkameen, and we run it organically. And basically, the vineyard is about 15 years old. It's a fairly small plot of, although the site itself is quite large, it's about a 50-acre site. The Viognier is only about a 2-acre parcel. Viognier is kind of an interesting variety because it gets its flavour very late in the development. So normally, in some varieties like Riesling, for example, you'll get flavour right through as the grape is ripening. But Viognier is unusual in that it has a very short window in which there's a lot of aromatics that are produced. So as a result, most of the better Viogniers, and I would say probably Condrieu in France, there's some good ones in maybe Eden Valley in Australia. There's some good ones maybe in the southern part of France, in Languedoc. A couple of good ones coming out of California. But those areas that do them well are kind of interesting because they are able to retain the acidity with Viognier, because Viognier has a bad habit of losing all its acidity just as it gets ripe. And the Similkameen Valley is kind of interesting from my perspective because it has quite cold nights. There's a lot of granite, so it gets hot in the day, this particular site, but it gets cold at night. So you get Viognier that actually gets to ripeness. So you get all those beautiful apricot, peachy, kind of vanillan aromatics, but you also have some acidity. So you have enough tartness to kind of keep the wine in check. So if everyone wants to try it.
Yeah.
No, sorry.
Yeah, we absolutely have to try. I see many people just
Yeah.
diving
Some
straight in,
people
and I
have
love
tried
it. Yeah, of course. There was, I think someone in the chat, Andy, actually said, "Show us your family crest." So I have a bottle of Rachel's Cuvée here, Marcus. Is that the
Yes.
right crest that I could show off on camera?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the family crest it's a little bit mirrored because of the obviously because of the camera, but this is a sparkling, so we weren't actually able to use it for the sampling because obviously by the time it got to you guys, it wouldn't be sparkling anymore. But this is Rachel's Vineyard Cuvée, which is the sparkling that we were originally hoping to get to taste when we were doing an in-person tasting. Obviously, we can't do that anymore. Now, we didn't want to give you flat sparkling wine because that just sounds sad.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's the family crest for everybody who was asking, which I think is very cool that you can sort of have your own family branded onto your wine. It's pretty exciting.
But
Something different. I mean, it might just be speaking to my ego.
No, it's actually it's a kind of a good honor system, because if you make a bad wine, your family will kick your butts.
Yeah. Especially if you come from a winemaking family, absolutely. Karen's actually just asked, is it aged in barrels?
Yeah, so this wine was basically, so in terms of technique, it's sort of halfway between kind of New World techniques and Burgundian techniques. We use French oak barriques, so 100% of it goes into French oak barriques. About 50% of that are brand new barrels, and 50% are older barrels, so usually around 2-3 years old. So it spends about 11 months in French oak barriques. We let the primary fermentation go through, then we stop the wine from going through secondary fermentation, which would be the malolactic fermentation. And then we also stir the lees. So that process is called batonnage. And it's a kind of a Burgundian technique where it helps break the lees down, which gives you some of those nice creamy aromatics. And also what Viognier is known for is it's known as being really viscous grape. It's got a lot of viscosity and weight, and doing some of that lee stirring can help give you some of that weight. So that's the basic technique anyway for making it.
So when we're tasting this wine, what do you taste, Marcus?
So for me, just basic tasting 101. If people are not familiar with just basic wine tasting, what you want to do is you want to have a look at it. You want to smell it without agitating the wine, then agitate it, and then you'll get a different group of flavors. Then put it in your mouth, draw a little bit of air through as you're tasting, something like this. That'll release the flavors up into the back of your nose where you actually smell it, and then that'll allow you to taste it. So for me, this wine has got lots of those kind of lemon curd and, like I said before, apricot and peach juice. There's a vanilla note to it. There's a little bit of hazelnut for me. And the thing that I really like about this wine is that it does have a crispness to the finish. There's no sweetness per se. There's as it enters the mouth, there's initially kind of a fruit note, but that dissipates to kind of a lemony finish, which cleans your palate and sort of allows you to go for the next sip. So that's what I taste anyway.
Yeah, I think there's quite a few people who are definitely mentioning apricot and peach. Vanilla was something that I'm like glad you mentioned because I notice it now, but I don't know if there's a lot of people like that, but I tend to get tasting notes after people tell me what I'm tasting, which is always, I don't know if that's the most professional way to do things, but
That's how you learn.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
but yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, I know coffee. Wine I'm learning. I'm excited to learn.
Awesome.
I very random question that I had. When can we tuck into the hummus? Absolutely anytime you like. We purposely actually, and that sounds really silly, but it's a fair question when you're doing wine tasting. We actually purposely made it so it was beautiful hummus, very nice, but it shouldn't overpower any of the wines. And we did that on purpose. We made it in-house specifically so that it shouldn't mess with your tasting in any way. So if you're hungry, please eat the hummus.
Nice. I think it's always good to eat food with wine. I think they were born together, so.
I think so, yeah. I mean, it's all part of the experience, isn't it?
Oh, for sure.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So I would love to hear, I've seen a few people, I'd love to hear maybe even just through the chat what everybody else is thinking about the Viognier. Everybody seems pretty excited so far. Lots of talk of apricot peach notes, it's light, smooth fruit. There's all sorts of things going on. It's a really interesting wine. I actually think the first time I had Viognier was only under a year ago, and it was what made me even consider white wine as a drink. Before that, I wouldn't have been near it. But Viognier was like where I started. So nice. I wonder if everybody else is having a similar sort of experience. I doubt it. I'm sure everybody here is much more experienced than I am. Andy's actually asked if you know off the top of your head, Marcus, what maybe some of the best regions in the world are for this type of grape?
Yeah, I was sort of mentioned a couple before, but I mean, the one that everyone talks about is Condrieu, which is in the northern Rhone Valley. It's kind of a standalone appellation. There's also one called Chateau Grillet, but it's I'd say Condrieu is kind of the preeminent spot for it. Although now most of Viognier in the world is actually planted in Australia, southern France, and California. So from Australia, I kind of like the Viogniers from Eden Valley, from Adelaide Hills. Some of the great southern area in Western Australia make some pretty good ones. In California, I think that Sonoma Coast is pretty good for Viognier. I think genuinely the Okanagan makes some very good Viognier because it needs quite a lot of heat units, particularly in the south end of the valley. And I'll sort of include Similkameen because Similkameen in the south end of Similkameen gets quite hot as well, almost hotter in fact than the southern end of the Okanagan Valley. So any area where you've got those kind of enough heat units to get that last kind of % or two of ripeness out of it, because that's where you get all that really intense stone fruit aromatics from. And then I do like some of the more, I guess, generic wines coming out of sort of southern France, Languedoc-Roussillon areas. Got some very good Viognier actually.
Nice. All right. Well, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'm really enjoying the Viognier, but I would also love to try some of these other wines. So how do we feel about moving forward onto the Pinot Gris if everybody's ready to maybe get on board with that? What do we think? Yeah, we're happy?
Yep.
All right. Well, we get empty glasses or we refill glasses or however you guys are working. And we can get everything organized. Yes, I've just asked. So I also actually, while we're pouring and getting set up, Marcus, I do have a question that I've been asked. And to be perfectly honest, I don't know if it's maybe a small typo or if I'm actually misunderstanding the question. But we had a question that said, what is the bread mix of flowers?
Is that the bread that you guys provided with the hummus?
Is that what you were talking about, Donald? That actually would be, that would make a lot more sense. I wasn't going to assume that I knew something that I didn't. But, and the list of things that I don't know is very long.
I don't know anything about baking. You'd have to ask my wife.
No, I think they're talking about.
Well, we might see if we can circle back to that question once we've had a chance to clarify a little bit. But in the meantime,
Is from Bad Dog Bread, and they're basically hand milled grains from BC. So I think if it's a sourdough, it's just a regular whole wheat flour. That's my answer.
There we go. That does make sense. That makes a lot more sense. Awesome. All right, so everybody's got the Pinot Gris in their hand. I'm sure everybody is smelling and swirling and sampling and breathing in a little bit of air.
So if everyone's had a chance to taste it, the Pinot Gris comes from a block we have just above us here on the winery. It's quite an interesting block. It's definitely the highest block on the Naramata bench. It's at about 630 meters above sea level, which is very, very high. So as a result, the vineyard is a little bit cooler than some site. It has a southwesterly aspect, but which gives it kind of good infiltration for sun from a physics perspective. But the vineyard itself has quite cool nights. In the winters, it gets a little bit colder. It has a lot more snow than we get sort of down in the lower parts of Naramata. We're at about 500 meters where our vineyard is, which is quite high actually for Naramata even, but this one's 130 meters even higher than we are. So as a result, the grapes and the vines, they struggle quite a lot. The bunches are actually very tiny. I wish I had a photo of some of the bunches I could show you, but do you have anything on your phone maybe? But they're tiny berries and they're tiny bunches. They're almost little bonsai bunches, probably about yay big. But as a result, you end up with this super intense flavor, which is kind of interesting for Pinot Gris, because there's a lot of Pinot Gris and Pinot Grigio out there that can be very kind of generic tasting, sort of vinous tasting. Some is the word some people will use, where it's just, it's neither here nor there. But when I tasted the fruit from this site, it was just, I was amazed with the intensity that you get. So we do basically it's harvested, then it spends about 24 hours on skin. So we'll destem it and crush it and put it basically in ferment vessels, and then it's pressed lightly to old oak. It's actually fermented in old French oak. It's a natural fermentation, so it takes quite a long for the fermentation to complete. This one took around about 2 months, and the ferment went almost to dryness, so there's a little bit of sweetness at the end. The yeast basically fermented as much as they could, and then they died. They go to the bottom of the barrel. Then we do a little bit of leaf stirring again, and it spends about 6 months in those old barrels. So if you look at it, it'll have a slight pinky hue for Pinot Gris is actually a pinky purple grape. If you look at it on the vine, on the bunch, and when the yields are this low, like we get less than 1 ton per acre from this site, you get these really intense sort of lychee, rose petal, lemon peel, almost like a cashew character. So it's quite floral, like it's more floral probably than people are used to for Pinot Gris, I would imagine. And the other nice thing with this site is it does, because it's so cold in the evenings because of how high it is, it does retain its acidity, which is another bit of a problem with Pinot Gris as a grape generally in the Okanagan. It doesn't hold that crispness as much as it does in some of the cooler sites. So I like working with it. I think it's a pretty unique Pinot Gris, and there's, it's one of those things. Honestly, I don't like drinking 90% of the Pinot Gris out there, just because it's so kind of generic and can be a little bit boring. But when you get across sort of really good producers with good sites that are doing sort of interesting things, it can be just a gorgeous grape. So yeah, in terms of aromas. The palate is probably medium bodied, I would say. It's a great food accompaniment. I think that, you know, there's pretty well no oak on it. We put it in old barrels to give it sort of some textural breadth, but not for any oak flavor, because there's no oak flavor left because they're old barrels. The idea is basically to just give it some texture and some sort of make it a little more interesting and finesse. And I love this as a seafood wine. Actually, this is great. You know, Thai food. It's great with any kind of steamed fish dishes or grilled seafood. You know, I'm Australian. We like to throw some shrimp on the barbie. You know, prawns.
It had to come out sooner or later, didn't it?
Yeah. But big Australian king prawns that are about that big.
Yeah, no, not shrimp. We don't even have shrimp. We have prawns. Well, that's awesome. You actually answered a lot of the questions that we were getting, which is mostly based around what you would recommend pairing it with. Lots of fish, white meats in general, maybe, or am I pushing it a little bit?
No, for sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. You know,
definitely, yeah. It's a lot, definitely not in a bad way, but it's a lot sweeter than I was expecting for a Pinot Gris.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, we can let that wine go to dryness, which would mean basically we sort of let the fermentation continue. But with the amount of acidity that is in this site, I like to, you know, it finished at a, like, for me, wine's all about balance. Like nothing should be out of whack. It should now show typicity and balance, like number one. And for me, this is because it's got that crispness to it. You have the sweetness, and then the crispness cleans your palate afterwards. So if it didn't have that sweetness, you would end up with it would just be very tart and quite hard. That's why we sort of did that approach.
Yeah, no, it
I find with this Pinot Gris that there's a bit of minerality in it as well, which is really refreshing when drinking.
That's interesting. I get that definitely as well, that chalkiness, and I think it may have something to do with the acidity, but you know, I generally see chalkiness in this site here and that site, just generally with the Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Gris all have this kind of slight minerality to it, which is nice. I mean, I like kind of grown-up wines. You know, just fruit is not interesting. I think that, you know, you have some nice sort of juxtaposition of savory and fruit is what makes wine interesting.
That's awesome. How are we feeling about having a look at the first of the children? I don't know if it's actually the first one. Is Tay the first one?
Tay.
You know, I'm curious. Is Tay's the middle child?
Yeah.
Right. So the middle child's usually like the boisterous one. Is that what Pinot Noir's like?
No,
he's
the middle child, actually.
Well, why don't we we'll get everybody on the way and pouring the Pinot Noir, which is labeled number 3 in your samples. I have a quick question for you actually I have a couple of questions for you, Marcus. You already touched on this a little bit, but you mentioned you sort of don't like the really simple, straightforward, or like just pure fruit wines or anything like that. So is there a particular style of wine that you find a little bit more exciting?
I'm pretty eclectic. Honestly, I love anything as long as it's balanced and well made. And you know, that could come from a big company or a small company, or from a Austrian wine or a Okanagan wine. It just, honestly, if the people that have made it have done it with purpose, and they've created something that's balanced, I find any of those wines interesting. A wine can be compelling for me, like, a Pinot Gris could be compelling, or a Sangiovese could be compelling. It doesn't really, the variety is not as important to me as what the actual wine is saying to you at the time.
Yeah. So Carrie asked why we recommended putting the reds in the fridge for a few minutes before. And that's because your home is a bit warmer than the cellar. And you want the wine to be cellar temperature really when you're drinking it. So just a few minutes really brings it to the right temperature, and so it hits your tongue just perfectly, and you're able to taste the wine how it should be tasted.
And what I would say with that is that I think that that's generally the case, and often I think particularly with some, some of those bigger New World reds, that can be really helpful. Our alcohols are generally pretty moderate with our wines, so I don't think they need to be chilled too much, because if you chill a wine too much, the sort of the inherent body and sweet, you can sometimes diminish the perception of that mid palate richness. But as a technique, I think it's a good one.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, if it's too cold, it closes it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. You need that sweet spot. So Marcus and Rachel, what brought you to BC to make wine? Why not? You've been all over the world making wine or working in wine. Why BC? Why Naramata?
You want to take that one?
We actually came here in 2004 and thought we'd stay for a year or so. We didn't have children at the time, and just kind of traveling around still, and we've been here ever since. So it was not really the intention to stay here, but I think from a wine perspective, the fact that you can ripen Chardonnay and Pinot in the same valley that you can ripen Shiraz, that's pretty, I think from a winemaking side of things, that's pretty unique. You can basically make all the varieties that you want to make in one region, which I think for Marcus, that was kind of a draw for sure, but the lifestyle here is pretty awesome too. So it was kind of a good place to raise a family and make wine and do all of it. So yeah.
Win-win.
Yeah,
sure.
Exactly.
What she said.
Always a stable answer.
I'd love to know if anybody's had our wine before, or if it's all a new experience for everybody.
Yeah, that'd be great to know. Everybody who's potentially tasting these for the first time or potentially tasting them for the 10th time. We're not judging.
Yeah, I have to admit, I spelled Daydreamer in Vancouver and a little bit beyond. And today was my first time trying the Viognier. Oh my goodness, I'm impressed.
It's all of our first times tasting the Viognier, Jesse.
Yeah, I know, but I am very excited to.
That's really good. Well, a lot of people are trying the wine for the first time.
Yeah, look at that.
So it's really exciting.
That's exciting for us too.
Get to help someone discover something new. Laura and Nick have tried a few previously. I wonder if any in particular spring to mind that you guys have tried that we could maybe pass on. But everybody's the things that I'm getting, everybody's saying some really good things. Someone asked, is there potentially a tasting note of anise in there? Anise? I'm not sure. How do you pronounce that? Anise? Anise?
Yeah,
I think everybody says it different.
Definitely. Anise is that kind of licorice character.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think with the Tay, the Tay is a super floral. Like it just jumps out of the glass. It's quite a fascinating wine. There's lots going on, and it's one of the wines that I kind of like to sit with for a long time. It does change dramatically as you get through a glass, and it's quite a fun wine to taste because there is so much going on.
Yeah, I personally have had some Pinots that are very just like, even at my level, very like delicious. Don't get me wrong, but very straightforward. It's like typically it's a really well-known, really simple wine that doesn't often have a lot of character, or at least in some of the experiences that I've had. So it's kind of nice to have something that's a little bit more interesting. There's a lot more happening in this wine.
Complex.
Yeah, right.
Complex. Yeah, that's the right word. That is exactly it. I don't typically find Pinot all that complex, but this, on the other hand, is delicious and so much going on.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think Pinot Noir, it's genuinely one of the best grapes in the world, really. But the problem is, outside of Burgundy,
I was gonna say I'm a little bit of a old world Pinot lover for sure, but this is my favorite Pinot that we've ever made. It's delicious. But yeah, I think Burgundy is definitely
Yeah,
a great place to find
I
good
tend to
Pinot.
gravitate more towards Burgundy for Pinot Noir. I do like a lot of stuff coming out of Oregon. I think that Naramata actually genuinely is super exciting, and it's sort of at the precipice of becoming known as a really high end, like, world Pinot Noir producer.
It's almost like a little Burgundy though here. Isn't
It is. It reminds me a lot of Burgundy. Yeah, it's yeah. There's lots of potential. But
Is that something that's? Oh, sorry. No, please go on.
No, after you, Christian.
Oh, I was just going to say, is that something that's coming out recently, or is it just like, are people just discovering it, or has something changed?
I don't know if people are discover. I think people are starting to discover it, but it's just one of those things that there's been a lot of regions that have tried to champion Pinot Noir sort of semi-successfully, semi-unsuccessfully, and not many have become really very successful at it. You know, you've got probably, maybe on one hand, I could say the regions that would make decent Pinot. I would say that in New Zealand, there's two regions that are doing well: Central Otago and the Martinborough region. I'd say, you know, Oregon State is, like, Willamette in particular, is doing really good stuff. There's actually some excellent stuff coming out of Niagara as well with Pinot Noir. Some of you know, some of the Back Elder stuff and the Clos de Jourdain, and those wines are pretty exciting. There's, you know, a couple of regions, let's say, in Australia, one or two in Germany, Austria, but it's a tough grape. It really is a heartbreak grape, they call it, and it's because it is so difficult to get it right. So to base an industry on it is very challenging and pretty dangerous thing to do in a lot of ways. It's much easier to grow Merlot than it is to grow Pinot Noir, or to make a decent.
Hey, that's interesting.
Yeah. So, but I love it. And Rach said to me, you know, said, if you're gonna, because originally our plan was not to do Pinot Noir, and then we decided to do it, and she said, well, if you're gonna do it, you better make it bloody good.
That sounds like a very Aussie thing to say.
Yeah, she's picked up a few things. So this wine, it's basically comes from our vineyard site here. We have 3 clones for any nerds there. We have 667, 777, and 828 are the 3 clones we use. It spends about 11 months in French oak barrels, around 30% new barrels, and then 70% older barrels. It's a natural fermentation. We destem, and then we foot tread, and we pugeage. We hand plunge the grapes as to make them, and then it basically goes into barrel, natural malolactic fermentation, and the wine's not filtered prior to bottling either, so it'll probably throw a slight sediment over time. But it's like Pinot Noir is like a medium-bodied variety, but it's all about kind of that finesse and the seductive quality that you can get, and it's really tough to get. And I would say maybe in my career I've done 2, maybe 3 Pinot Noirs that I've really, really loved, where I could say, you know, maybe I've done 20 or 30 good Syrahs or Shiraz. So it is a really tough one to get right, but I think that we were lucky this year, this particular vintage, that it had a
We
little.
both love this wine.
Yeah. And for me, this has a lot more of those natural wine qualities coming out of it as well. You know, it's sort of it's this there's this kind of vibrancy to it that you don't get in a lot of you know, commercial fermentations. So that's kind of interesting for me.
Yeah, it is really. I personally have a question, and there's also a question I'd like to bring in from the chat. If you had to, like, very, very briefly, because I want to make sure that we can keep drinking wine, and that's all very exciting for everybody. But if you had to very briefly explain some of those really stereotypical characteristics that natural wine has, as opposed to, you know, the rest of the wine, is there anything in particular that stands out? Because so me, for example, I've only started really getting a little bit more education in the last year or so. And while I hear natural wine turned around a lot, and through work I've obviously learned quite a bit, but I'm discovering that there's a lot of people who definitely wouldn't know what the difference would be, or really anything about. So what's the biggest one thing, or even two things, do you think that really make that difference?
I guess the thing with natural wine is it's very difficult to define what natural wine is, because a lot of people approach it different ways. Some people will add sulfur to the wine at finishing. Some people won't filter it. Some people will filter it. Some people just do a natural fermentation, but inoculate a second fermentation. There's so many variations to it, but for me, the fundamental philosophy is that wine is a pretty natural process, and it can be made without doing much to it, apart from sort of separating the grapes from the skins and the stalks, and allowing that process to kind of progress on its own is, I guess, the natural philosophy. And for me, really, I think that you can make fabulous wines commercially. And I have done in the past a lot of sort of more commercial production, and I guess more just from a purely scientific production standpoint. But the most interesting wines that I've had in my career have tended to be either organic, biodynamic, natural, or low intervention, and that's really just at the top echelon. The problem with natural wine is that it can be very unstable. It can have prone to a lot of faults. So it can have things that taste bad or look bad or smell bad, because something's gone wrong during the process. And I think that that's why I like to pursue it, is that it is very, very challenging to produce a wine. It sounds strange, but to make a wine and not do as much to it is almost more challenging than being very sort of recipe oriented in the production. I know I ran.
Yeah. No, that's fine. That's really good. So, because for people like us, it helps to learn a little bit more about it. I think we should probably make sure that everybody's still got glasses that they're working on. So if we feel like maybe moving on to the next wine, which is called Amelia.
There's a couple of questions on this.
But there is a couple of questions, yeah, so I want to make sure we don't get too carried away. So maybe while everybody's sort of getting ready with wine number 4, we can quickly go through some of these questions. One question that was really interesting, actually, is how would you in particular suggest aging this wine?
Honestly, I think this wine is drinking beautifully now. I think it's maybe 3 or 4 years, I would say. It's not going to be the longest lived Pinot Noir. I think that it's, for me, it's so vibrant and drinkable right now that I would say 3 or 4 years is, and generally a lot of the wines we do will age a long time, 10 or 15 or whatever. And that's not to say that I don't think this wine is good. I think this wine is actually beautiful. I think it's a wonderful wine, but it's, for me, it's if it gets better than this, wow, I'd be amazed, but I'd be stoked. But for me, it's drinking so beautifully now that I think that this, if it progresses sort of over the next 3 or 4 years, I think that would be a good aging point for it.
About as far as you would want to take it.
I think so. Yeah.
I had some good advice once, and they said if you like the bottle, buy a few, and wait a few months before you try it, and when you're in love with it, just drink the rest. Because not every wine is mate age, and it doesn't make it a different quality. But yeah, it's good to experiment and learn how the style you like and how it ages, and just get familiar with it.
Yeah.
And when you say floral with the Pinot Noir, do you smell violets?
Yeah, sort of like, for me, it's real violets and potpourri, almost that dried flower, but there's that kind of, that lifted licorice, almost sort of ethereal quality that I find super appealing. There's also, those kind of cherry notes and almost cola, like a cola note.
Well, everybody's slowly evaluating and sipping on Amelia, just really quick, one question I do have that I must ask, because I must know the answer to this. If you had to name one thing that is just the easiest thing to go wrong in a winemaking process, what do you think it would be?
Vineyard.
Yeah, not paying attention to your vineyard.
Yeah, yeah. So just the chance that something goes over your head or perhaps escapes your attention, and then it's all over.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. Like we run our vineyards organically, which is probably, I would say, 30 or 40% more work than running a vineyard using synthetic chemicals. And just paying a lot of attention to things. I think in the winemaking process, maybe not topping your barrels, not making sure that your bungs are in and that you have full vessels, so full tanks, full barrels. It's easy for a batch to go wrong if it's exposed to oxygen or if there's.
It really only takes one mistake, doesn't it?
It can be, yeah.
Yeah.
There's lots that can go wrong in the process for sure.
I can only imagine. Well, what do we think about? I'd love to get some feedback on how everybody's feeling about the fourth wine, which is Amelia, which is a co-ferment, 90% Syrah, 10% Viognier, which is I've never had a co-ferment before, so I was really interested to try this one. I'd love to hear what everybody's thinking about it. Maybe get a little bit of feedback. Oh, yeah. So we're thinking peppery or even spicy as potential tasting ideas for a wine like this. Marcus, what would you say it describes as?
This one generally is quite for me. I don't know. It reminds me of Canadian breakfasts a lot, where you've got.
You know what? Burnt caramel just came up, and now I'm thinking maple syrup.
There you go. So it's like that in Australia we don't really have a tradition of kind of the sweet meats thing where bacon and maple syrup but Syrah is always to me quite a savoury, very spicy grape. So you've got more of those kind of that leather and pepper and but Viognier is like it's more we tasted the other one before. You've got that kind of those apricot notes and the peach notes. So when you get it together, it's like when you put apricot jam on roast pork or something like that. It's like that kind of balance of the light side of the force and the dark side of the force.
It's a good way of describing it. For the novices like myself, I again only recently learnt this, but could you give us a brief idea of what co-ferment actually means?
Yeah, sure.
I know it's a simple concept, but it goes over like it went over my head for years.
Yeah, so there's the true way for co-fermentation is where you take two different varieties and you ferment them in the same vessel at the same time. So in our case, we're using Viognier and Syrah, which is kind of a traditional style that you get in the Northern Rhone. So they'll often have Viognier interplanted with Syrah, particularly in the Côte-Rôtie region. And so when the grapes are harvested, they'll get a little bit of Viognier and they'll have a lot more Syrah. And so for me, just trial and error over the years, somewhere between sort of that 5 and 15% of co-fermentation with Viognier really gives Syrah a lift. So it'll give you some increased aromatics. You'll get a different mouthfeel from it. Viognier is actually a very tannic grape, so it's got a lot of astringency. And so if you're not familiar with astringency, think of sort of the tongue depressor that your doctor would put in your tongue. That's astringent, or like, cold tea that's been sitting there for a long time. That's astringency. And if you taste the Viognier grape and you chew the skins, it's actually very, very astringent. And so for me, it gives you some of those structural components that you don't otherwise get with Syrah, because the block of Syrah that we have is not a particularly tannic. It's not very coarse. It's quite a finely structured grape, so that the Viognier in our case can actually give it some more structure and body and lift. So yeah, they're basically the grapes are fermented together, and then they're pressed together, and then they go into barrel together or to whatever vessel.
Nice, easy way to describe it, as opposed to like a blend, which is sort of
Yeah, that's right.
after.
I mean, they'll do lots of, say, if you're in Chianti, for example, there's often some, Sangiovese might be planted with Colorino, and they'll be fermented together, or Trebbiano even, which is a white grape, can be sometimes fermented together for different reasons.
Yeah, that's actually some. Oh yeah, it was you, Jesse, that was saying the wine is 10% white wine. Is it common for co-ferments to be like stereotypically a red grape and a white grape, or is it just a free for all?
Could be anything, yeah. Often, I mean, Bordeaux, there's often, Merlots co-fermented with Cabernet Franc, or from different regions, they can be co-fermented. The reason that, I was particularly excited about doing it in the Okanagan is I spent time working in the Northern Rhone in France, and Syrah usually ripens a little bit later than Viognier. So if they're planted on the same block, their ideal ripening dates are about a week to 10 days apart. Whereas in the Okanagan, Viognier in Naramata ripens at exactly the same time as Syrah that ripen in say, Golden Mile area, which is about an hour south of us. So we're able to pick it on the same day at optimal phenological ripeness, so optimal potential. And so for me, it sort of, from a philosophical standpoint, it gave us the ability to make potentially, even better than some sites that had them both planted on the same block.
True co-ferment.
Seems like a good opportunity, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I'm such a fan of. I dare I say potentially my favorite so far. I don't know what everybody else is thinking, and it's very subjective, and I know this. Marcus, you've also just got a very brief compliment in your chat. Just if we can all take a moment to appreciate Marcus's beard, because it's just stunning.
Thank you very much.
So it's definitely it's something to be proud of, I think, and something that's definitely getting people's attention, which is always interesting.
Getting bigger over COVID for sure.
Oh, you know what? Like, I understand that. I know a lot of people who have gone a little bit crazy or experimented a little during this time. I have one question, but perhaps you can answer it while we work on getting the. Are we ready? Please stop me if I'm going a little fast, but if everybody's ready, we could potentially move on to the last wine on the list, which is the Jasper. But in the meantime, I do have a question, Marcus, and it's more of a general question than on wine specifically, but do you have any tips on navigating through wine prices at the liquor store?
Yeah,
like, for example, like as a general rule, are more expensive wines actually going to have like an elevated flavor? Are they going to be something that's like worth investing in, or not always?
I think you need to understand what you like to drink to begin with, and the sort of wines that you've liked in the past, and maybe if you're getting interested in wine, I think that a really good thing to do is get some the recommendations from independent judges and critics. So, I mean, the score system, as much as I dislike it, it does sometimes give you an insight into whether a wine is good or not. Medals maybe sometimes can help. But
it's not an easy question to answer.
Yeah, and the short answer to the question is that the price to quality ratio is not linear in the wine industry. But at the high end, I think that if you're spending sort of $50+ on a bottle of wine, it's taken a lot for that wine to get to market. It's had to get through a lot of palates, a lot of people saying no for it actually to get on the shelf. So, if you want to spend a bit more on a bottle of wine, and it's been sort of had some sort of critical review along the way, then sometimes it does work. But you can get bargains. You really can. There's some sort of anomalies all around the world that you just have to realize.
It's very regional dependent, right?
It is
Like
absolutely, yeah.
Portuguese wine is, you can find a great or very high end quality for the same price as like a good BC wine. And it's,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, the price is it's a really tricky one, and wine price. Honestly, the biggest thing that governs wine price is land price. So where the grapes are grown, if the land is expensive, then the bottle of wine has to be. They have to charge more for it. So that's why a bottle of wine from Napa is expensive, is because their land prices are so high. Same in the Okanagan, our land prices are extremely high relative to a lot of places in the world. So it does make it challenging. But yeah, it's a tricky one. I mean, that whole walking into a liquor store, if you're not really that familiar with wine, can be a little bit daunting for sure. But the other thing I would say is find a critic, or find someone that you have a similar palate to. I always found that useful. When I was learning about wine, is find someone that sort of tastes like, if you taste a bottle of wine and you read someone's notes, does it actually taste like they are tasting it? Because everyone perceives things differently. Like, everyone has different genetics, different history, different sort of aromatic ideas. So yeah, I know that was rambling again, but
No. Well, I mean, it's the thing. Like, I mean, I quite often have the same issue. I walk into a wine store, and especially before I started learning anything, I was just overwhelmed. And you don't even know where to look. You don't know, like, I mean, if you don't want to break the bank, can you still find a really nice wine? And if you do want to break the bank, are you guaranteed to find a good one? Like, it's not that clear cut, but it can be quite overwhelming just walking into a wine store.
something I've learned selling wine in Vancouver, something I've learned is, like, when you buy wine at places like Winston, they put in the time to learn about all the wines they bring in. And so you can tell them what you like, and they have an answer for it. Same thing if you're in the downtown core, a lot of the wine focused stores, they have a level of wine education behind them to be able to work there. So they can kind of translate that for you if you kind of take note and realize what you want and what you're looking for.
Sounds like you just have to go talk to the right people, guys. Yeah. That's all it is.
Yeah. I mean, if there's someone that you trust at a store, like, I think that generally the private stores and the restaurants, they've got really knowledgeable people. And so
it's mostly because we're drinking it after work. Just saying.
We're lucky in the city for sure.
We are, absolutely, yeah.
Trust your sommelier.
So I think everybody's about ready to start getting onto the last one we have in line, sample number 5. I'm pretty sure that there's a few people who are already well and truly into it. So the last one, Jasper, is a blend of 3 different grapes. Is that right, Marcus?
Yeah, so this is Merlot, Cabernet Franc, and Cabernet Sauvignon. So this is, I guess, pretty traditional Bordelais blend. So I guess some people call it a Meritage blend. But the idea with blending these 3 grapes is that Merlot is generally a fairly early ripening variety relative to the other 2. It's a little bit softer. It's quite juicy and gives you some volume in the mouth. Cabernet Franc can be quite aromatic. It's a little bit edgier, a little bit harder, but it has a lot of character. And Cabernet Sauvignon is very tannic, so it has a lot of that kind of that tongue depressor tannin we were talking about before. It gives the wine structure. So when you put them all together, hopefully the wine is more than the sum of its parts, and that's kind of the whole ethos with doing a Bordeaux blend. So the winemaking for it is actually quite traditional, I guess, Bordelais winemaking, where we harvest the grapes ripe, and then the grapes are destemmed into small batches, and then they spend quite a lot of time on skins. Again, it's a natural fermentation. We can spend probably up to 1 month on skins before the grapes are actually pressed off, depending on what the variety is and what the year is like. Then it spends a long time in oak. It spends anywhere from sort of 18 to 20 months in French oak, and quite a high portion of new oak. So there's about 50% new oak. So that will help the ageability and the structure. And generally, these wines, the Jasper blend in particular, it's designed for aging. It's it'll age 10, 15 years happily, and although it'll drink well now, it'll definitely reward you if you can lay it down for a few years. So in terms of aromatics, for me, it's kind of the plums and cassis and cigar box, a little bit of the licorice again, tobacco. Yeah, that black currant sort of comes through for me.
Guys, I'm loving the chat at the moment. I have to say, sorry, Marcus, I'm so fascinated by this. But everybody's very excited about it. Actually, this idea of having the three grapes working together is it's a really interesting idea, and it's something that I always, in my head, the idea of a blend was just a cheap way to make wine until I started learning about it. Mm-hmm. So something like this, is this, I don't know if I'm off the mark here, but this combination of grapes, the Merlot, the Cab Sauv, the Cab Franc, is that a common style of making wine?
Yeah, it is. This is probably more common, sort of Merlot, Cab Franc dominated wines are more common kind of in the right bank of Bordeaux. So, Pomerol, Saint-Emilion, that sort of area. Whereas in the left bank, they'll call it, there's usually more Cabernet Sauvignon dominated wines. So, but as a sort of a concept, blends and using these varieties are very common in good regions, I would say, Napa, Margaret River. There's, pretty.
Oh, Margaret River. Special place in my heart.
Yeah, there you go.
We're getting quite a lot of questions. I think the same thing is on everybody's mind right now, which is food.
Yes.
So I have one question that I think that I actually can answer, because someone's asked very specifically what would pair best with the Winston Benny, which is the Eggs Benedict that we have at the shop here. And it is potentially one of our most popular dishes on the menu. It's amazing. The only reason I can't have it every day is because it's huge and hearty and I immediately want to take a nap after. But it's just to give you an idea, so you can tell me if you think I'm a little off the mark, but it's potatoes cooked in duck fat, pulled pork on the top, and then 2 poached eggs in the hollandaise sauce. So really a bit of a twist on a classic Benny. And someone in the chat, Michael, has actually asked, what do you think would be the best wine to pair with that? Now, I personally would be leaning towards Amelia, the Coferman. Just not quite the richest wine on the spectrum, but getting quite close. Now, I know you haven't had a chance to taste it, but any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. My immediate thought was the Viognier would be really good with it.
Really? See, okay, so we have very different opinions. And you got to remember, guys, you have to take Marcus's advice over mine. I know food, but he knows wine.
And the reason I would say that is just that I think maybe the tannin would fight a little bit with the hollandaise, whereas with the the Viognier,
that's sort of like the lighter, or the almost lemon.
It's sort of inherently a little bit lemony as well, and so I don't know. I'll have to try it and tell you.
You will. That's absolutely it. The only solution is for you to try it.
Yeah.
But in general, I do have a question that I think would be really interesting. So we've been through 5 wines now. We've been through the Viognier, which is very exciting, and for everybody who's asking, is being released in January.
Yep, first week.
And we should be able, if you guys are interested in getting a hold of Viognier, we should be able to get pre-orders on the way within, is it fair to say within the next week or so, Marcus?
Yeah, you can pre-order online now, actually. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Maybe Wednesday
so we
do a pre-order as well, or get people on it.
Yeah.
You never know. But yeah, so we've had the Viognier, we've had a chance to try the Pinot Gris, and then we've had the Tay, we've had Amelia, we've had Jasper.
I
You've got
have
a bit of
to
a
say, Christian, with the Jasper, like, is this not Christmas dinner wine, Marcus?
Oh yeah. For sure.
Oh yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Yeah.
No, it's Christmas dinner.
As soon as, yeah.
If you had a beef Wellington, you'd be all over it.
Ooh, yeah.
Mm. So that leads straight into the question. So we're going to do like a little bit of a game. So for each wine, I would love if you could name what you think would be the best holiday dish to go with it.
Okay.
So first up, Viognier. What do you think would be the best holiday dish to go with Viognier?
I would say bennies with pulled pork and
Nice. Can we have a round of applause for Marcus, please? Okay, cool. No, I love it. And for the record, guys, I do know where to find a really good one. What about the Pinot Gris?
I personally, I really like Gravlax and smoked salmon kind of over the holidays, and I think that Pinot Gris would go great with Gravlax.
Ooh, okay. So now I'm just talking about the menu because we have smoked salmon. So guys, you know where to find us. Like most of you guys saw me today grabbing samples. Like you know where the Benny is, you know where the salmon is. All right, the Tay, the Pinot Noir.
Roast turkey. Can't go past turkey.
So it's just basically the holidays, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, turkey and cranberry is just awesome with Tay.
Okay, is that something? You sound like you're speaking from experience.
Yeah, I have a turkey in the oven right now. Actually.
Nice, that's perfect.
I'll show you the turkey in the oven.
Wonderful. So not only do we get some delicious wine, but we get the winemaker's turkey.
Yeah.
Well done. That's fantastic. Alrighty, blitz round. The Amelia, what do you think the best holiday dish would be?
Best holiday dish. I'm gonna put that on my wife. What's the best?
No,
holiday
I just
dish?
came back in here.
No, Amelia. What's the best holiday?
What do you think the best holiday dish that would pair with Amelia would be, Rachel?
I would think that a really awesome like charcuterie board actually with some cheese and some like smoked meats and
prosciutto.
Yeah, that's my choice.
Some good balls.
Andy suggested a Canadian bacon breakfast.
Oh,
what are our thoughts there?
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So Amelia is officially a breakfast wine, guys, and it is the holiday season. So,
Awesome.
And last but definitely not least, the Jasper. What would you say would be the best holiday dish to go with Jasper?
I think honestly, like a beef Wellington. That's my.
Yeah.
That would be my.
Yeah. I think it's hard to go past something like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cool. So Stephen and Sandy have just asked what time should they get there for the turkey?
Well, we have to let it rest, so probably another hour or so. Please.
All right, guys, you heard it here. 1 hour for turkey in Naramata. Awesome. Well, that actually gets us through all 5 wines.
Is there any last minute
Are there any questions? We'll give you guys a couple of minutes to get them all typed into the chat, and I'm sure there's going to be a pile of them that we're going to have to go through, but that's okay. We can do that.
Anthony, someone had asked about decanting the wines.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I did mean to circle back to that question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that generally, like the reds, I think are always worth decanting. In particular, the Amelia and the Jasper would really do with probably 2 hours decanting if you possibly could. I mean, the Jasper where this might sound strange to you guys, but I would even open it the day before and then put the cork in. And then come back to it the next day.
Okay, that's not something I've ever heard about a particular wine before. I mean, decanting it obviously, but to go back and wait like the full day,
yes,
to give everything a try. Is there something in particular that tends to bring out? that you're excited about?
Just generally, the jasper is so structured that the oxygen will soften some of those tannins, and it will open up some of the aromatics, because it can be, when Bordeaux sort of style wines or these Meritage wines are younger, they can be a little bit tight. When I say tight, it means that their aromas haven't really don't really want to come out until that you give them a little bit of time, either through decanting or leaving the bottle over a day, or coming back to it. So yeah, generally I think decanting is great. Decanting, I mean, we don't have any of the Pinot Gris is in screw cap. I think that decanting any screw cap wine for maybe half an hour is probably a useful thing to do, because the screw cap itself doesn't allow much oxygen at all to come through. So sometimes those wines can be a little muted and can jump out after a while.
Nice. Oh, that's awesome. Well, I think we're getting kind of close to wrapping up, which is very exciting, and we've had such a wonderful time. Thank you so much, by the way, for jumping on and joining us and talking us through some of these wines, or all of these wines, actually. It was such an opportunity to have you guys join us. So, thank you very much. I know everybody's very silently applauding and saying thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Not even silently. There's microphones happening. But yeah, no, it's been wonderful, and thank you again for giving us a chance to try the Viognier. That's phenomenal. For anybody who's actually interested in getting a hold of these wines, with the exception of the Viognier for the moment, because it's obviously a pre-release. All the wines that you tasted tonight are available on our store to order. The wine tasting page that you got, which I don't know if you got a chance to write down tasting notes, but I personally was just too obsessed with drinking the wine. But on the bottom of the page, there is a link to our online store. If you would like to order any of the wines, they're all available there, including the sparkling with Marcus's wonderful family crest. That's available too. And the Viognier, we will keep you updated as soon as when we're able to get it for you guys. But I can't imagine it would be too long. But yeah, they're all available to order online. You can send through the orders. We'll have them all ready basically the next working day, and you can pick them up in store. So it's super easy. Is there anything that anybody would like to add apart from thank you very much, all of you, for joining us?
I would just like to bring up one thing. Actually, if Marcus, since we haven't had a chance to talk about the cuvee, I'm wondering.
Oh yes, please. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, sure. I can just wrap up quickly. So the cuvee comes from our vineyard just out behind us, and it's 50% Chardonnay, 50% Pinot Noir. So traditional kind of champagne grapes, traditional method. So we use the Champenois method, which is basically we whole bunch press the grapes. Then we do a natural primary fermentation. We combine the grapes in barrel, and the fermentation occurs naturally, and then it goes spent about 12 months in older French oak barrels, and then we racked it off its lees, and then we tiraged it. So it went into the champagne bottle with yeast and a little bit of sugar, and then that secondary fermentation happens in the bottle, which gives you the bubbles, and then it spent another 18 months on lees in the bottle itself. So that gives you some breadiness and some creaminess. And then we disgorged it with no dosage. That means we got rid of we pop the cork, freeze the neck, get rid of the yeast plug that's in there, put the cork back on, and there's no dosage. So it's a completely dry wine. So it's very crisp, kind of bready, creamy. You'd have to fight Rachel for it.
And I would say that the Pinot Gris and the Cuvée are both sold out. So you can get it from Winston.
There you go, guys.
We've got them here. We've got them ready to go.
Yeah, which brings
We don't have a ton, just so you guys know.
Yeah.
We have some. And once it's gone, it's gone. We don't know when we'll be able to get it back, especially with these. You've heard it straight from the source that they're sold out. So who knows how long it's going to last.
And once this Zoom meeting is over, if you're looking for the wines, please go to the Winston website or message them on Instagram at winston.northvan. If you have any more questions for Marcus or Rachel, feel free to shoot them a message on Instagram at Daydreamer Wines. And if you're not in North Van or when Winston sells out, feel free to message at Amovino WS, which is Wine and Spirits, and we'll have a better idea of where else you can find it, what's left and hanging out. But yeah, thank you everyone so much for joining. I hope everyone had as much fun as I did.
Oh, I had so much fun. Let's do another one.
Yeah.
Honest question, hands up in the camera, who wants another one? There we go. There we go. All right, well, stay posted. Make sure you follow everybody on Instagram because we're definitely going to do another one, probably sometime in January, and we'll keep you guys all posted, get everything organized. But I don't know about you guys, but like this was technically work for me and I had a ball. So I don't know how much fun you guys were having.
Well done, guys. Yeah. Thanks to
job.
Winston and to Amovino, and thanks for everyone just sitting in their homes, letting us ramble to you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
Alrighty. Thank you so much, guys. We had a great night. We'll see you all soon.
Cheers.
Cheers.